You can go now, I guess.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Dunrovin Ranch in lovely Lolo, Montana. It is probably 30 degrees or so. I know that you have the weather on the member page, which is awesome. I think it's about that. It doesn't feel that cold as long as you keep moving. I'm sorry I'm a little late. You probably saw that my farrier Jack was here. We were going back and forth on whether to go ahead and shoe crow and for the January trip, and we were trying to time it so he didn't have too many holes stacked in his feet. What that means is that when you pull a shoe, you necessarily have holes in their foot, and if he pulls a shoe, does a little trim, and puts another shoe on, then you have another set of holes, right? So if we had shod him 3 times before my trip, he would have had what we say are holes stacked on his feet. And he's not growing very quickly, so we decided that we would not need to shoe him 3 times before my trip, but just 2 times. But what we decided this time is to go ahead and pull his shoes, which means take his shoes off. So we pulled his shoes, did a tiny little trim, didn't take much of anything off. And I don't need shoes because I'm not going to be riding on rocks or anything right now. And horses' feet, they expand and contract as the horse walks. So people who are against shoes have a good point in that the horse's hoof can't do what it's made to do with the shoe on because it cannot expand and contract, actually in 3 different directions. So it's a good idea to not shoe horses back to back to back for years and years. And so I'm glad that we pulled his shoes. His feet get to be good horse feet. Jack will be out here the 26th or 27th of December, and then we'll shoe him for the January road trip. And then we decided when I get back from the trip, we'll probably pull the shoes again for another month or 2 and let his feet be feet. And then if I'm going to be riding him and guiding on him, then we'll shoe him for the season. So that's why I'm a little late. I apologize. So Boots on the Ground, welcome to Boots on the Ground. This is, I believe, the last broadcast for the season. Thank you all for keeping me company on these Tuesdays. I hope you've learned a little bit. I hope you got to see what you can't see from the cameras, and your suggestions have been invaluable on what I can show you here at the ranch. I don't even think about what I do most of the time. It's just muscle memory, and I just do it. I don't think that it's not common sense. For example, James was just in here, and he said, look at all this stuff on the saddle. What is this stuff? Well, I said, this is this and this is this. And if you don't have experience with the saddle, this must look complicated and like a foreign object. So I could do things like that also in the spring. So today I'm going to show you how to clean tack. Tack is a saddle and a bridle. A halter can be tack. The breast collar, things that go on the horse, we call tack. And I said in the description that I have a love-hate relationship with cleaning tack, and I can trace that straight back to when I was 8 and 9 years old, and I rode at Flint Ridge Riding Club in La Cañada, Southern California. It was a very, very high-end riding academy that I found out later my parents couldn't afford. But I was sent there. I went there for a couple of years every weekend. I spent the night at a friend's house there. And what we had to do after every single lesson was take our tack completely apart and clean it every single time. And I grew to hate it. I remember being very frustrated because I couldn't. It takes a lot to learn how to put a bridle back together. Especially an English bridle, which has a lot more parts to it than what I love are simple Western bridles. English saddles don't have as many parts as English saddles don't have as many parts as a Western saddle. But I have to say that I have started to enjoy cleaning tack. It's kind of a meditative practice, much like horse grooming, which I've really started to love doing, and Crow loves it. It's changed our relationship completely. So anyway, I'm going to do a brief overview of cleaning tack. Basically, it's cleaning leather. And like everything else that has to do with horses and horse people, there are people who swear by one product, think another product will ruin your tack, do it in different ways. So I'm going to show you in general what we do. So the first thing we do, if I was going to go through the whole deal, I would take the saddle apart. I would take the breast collar off the saddle. I would undo all the buckles, and I would take it apart completely where it could be taken apart. The saddle, if I was going to do it right, I would take off the stirrups, take off the fenders, take off the latigo. The other side, the latigo hooks to something called an off billet, which is leather on the other side. I would take the whole thing apart. Similarly, with my bridle, I would take the whole thing apart. Now, I'm trying to keep this oiled up, and my saddle as well, because they're both new and very stiff. I like the horse to be comfortable, right? So, but you can also see that although this does have buckles, it also has leather that is connecting the hackamore to the headstall. And it took me a long time to get this undone, to put the hackamore on, and to retie this. I'd never done that before. I did have to look at YouTube, and I figured it out, but it's quite a deal, so I'm not going to do that. But if I was going to clean, I'll go ahead. You take it apart. Take the whole thing apart, because you want to get every single millimeter of the tack clean. I was going to, had I had time, I was going to go and bring in an English bridle and sit here with James and take it apart and show you how to clean. And I was going to say, hey, James, would you put this bridle back together, please? And he's a very, very bright man, but not everyone can put a bridle together just like that. It's hard, and I would have loved to have seen how he would have gotten it all connected, and then I could have tried to put it on a horse. It would have been good comedy. However, today I'm not going to do that, but we could probably do that some other time.
Thank you, Kelly.
So the first thing you want to do is get the dust off your saddle, and the way we do that is I have some warm water, which feels really good on my hands. Just a barely damp sponge, and you want to wipe off the dust. I haven't had this saddle too long, so it's not too dusty, but it's a little dusty. And you don't want to soak the leather, you just want to get the dust off. You can use a toothbrush. You can use, I use Q-tips actually to get underneath everything. So you just want to get the dust off, because when you get the saddle soap on it. So anyway, I don't know how many people these days actually clean their leather shoes, but it's basic leather care. It's nice to take care of your leather, otherwise it can crack, it can split, and you tend to really, well, one thing, you do depend on your tack. It can't break, it shouldn't break. So if you take good care of your leather, it just gets softer and softer, and you won't have to worry about things like that. Underneath gets dirty. You can see in this particular saddle all the different places that it can get dirty, and it does. Oop. all under there. Now, when I first got the saddle, not too long ago, a couple of months ago, it had never been oiled before. It was brand new. So I went over it thoroughly with oil. I oiled it first and let it soak in oil overnight. So you want to wipe off the dust and then clean out your sponge. And then you want to get your saddle soap. Now this is the ranch's stuff. No. Here we go. I love this stuff. Basic saddle soap. This is Phoebing's. It's great. This is leather grease. This is good stuff too. Saddle soap is basically glycerin. So then you have your damp sponge. And you get some saddle soap on there. And you just start soaping it good. Like that. And this would take a long time. It's actually kind of fun to do if you're sitting in front of the television, maybe watching an old Clint Eastwood movie, which I've been doing lately. For a few dollars more, it was really good. Like that, you just want to get it. It pulls up a lot more of the dirt. It's also one of those things like mucking that can be relaxing. It's also one of those things that, you know, it's all about taking care of your horse. And if you're a horse person, and there are horse people and there are non-horse people. If you're a horse person, anything you do to take care of your horse feels very good. Okay, so let's say I've soaped it up. You don't want the soap to dry. I will rinse my sponge again. I don't think Clint Eastwood ever cleaned a saddle, but I don't know. At least the man with no name didn't, I'm pretty sure. So, also, I mean, I think it's really cool for Western saddles that have all this really cool tooling in the leather, the stamping. However, it makes it a little more difficult to clean. When I first got the saddle and I oiled it good, and then I got something which we will get into in a second, and I had to get an electric toothbrush in order to get everything out of all the tooling. I didn't get all of it out, but you know, what are you going to do? So then you want to get the soap, all the soap off. The soap can dry the leather. Like that. And now that I've done this side, I'm going to have to do the whole saddle. But it needs it anyway. Okay, so I've got the soap off. And you can see how it's darkened. It got a little too wet, probably. Now, something that we had to do when I was a kid, and I don't know if they still call them that, but call them what I'm going to tell you we call them. That's from the trailer. So, there's things that grow on your tack. It's a combination of sweat and oil and dirt. This is the breast collar, and this goes across your horse's chest to keep the saddle in place. Now, you can see that the sweat and the salt in the sweat and the dirt really builds up on here. And it's actually not that easy to get off. When I was a kid, and I'm sniffing again, I'm sorry because it's cold. we called these nerds. And I don't know if they're still called nerds, but I can see, hi Arrow, under here, there are these bumps of oil and dirt. And man, they would come and inspect our tack. Oh gosh, we had to redo it and redo it and redo it. And now that I think about it, I'm wondering if they were just keeping us busy. That could have been it. So, what I do want to do is I would want to let this dry. Now that I've started this, I'm going to have to take this in tonight and work on it. So you've done that. You've gotten the dust off. You've soaped the leather to get more of the dirt off. You've gotten as much out of the tooling as you can. English saddles don't have tooling, so there was that. Okay? And then, I don't oil a saddle or a tack after I've done it the first time unless it gets real dry. This saddle is better than when I got it, but it's still a little dry. So what I will do next is what I like. Well, I'll go on and show you a couple different things. Leather dressing, all kinds of stuff. It has basically oils in it. We've got Lexol conditioner, which probably is a neat's foot oil blend. A lot of Lexol. And here we have neat's foot oil. Now, I was always told that you don't want to put neat's foot oil on stitching because it will rot the stitching. I don't know if that's true or not. I haven't had any tack long enough, but I oiled this saddle and I oiled my bridle and breast collar when I got them, and I think it'll be fine. The next thing I do, though, is after dust off saddle soap, is I like to put on, and I like this stuff. Excuse me for a second while I grab it. This is called saddle butter. It's a brand called Holes. This is mostly, does it say? I don't have my glasses. Anyway, it's a leather conditioner. And if you watch, it's actually, if you warm it up a little bit, put it in a double boiler a little bit, it'll soften up. But this will further soften and condition the leather. Put it in this hot water for a second. And you let this soak in for quite some time. And what I eventually end up doing is using my fingers, because my body heat will soften it too. So you rub that in there good everywhere. And remember, this is everywhere. And I do want to get it into the stamps on the saddle. I really like this was a custom-made saddle for someone else who decided that they wanted a different saddle, and I like the choices they made. So you want to put the saddle butter on. Let it soak in there, but not get too dry because it will be difficult to get it out. What I do is, and there's things you never do, like take a stiff brush to your tack. You don't want to scratch the leather. You don't want to, there's all kinds of things that you don't want to do. But, I mean, in reality, you also can't take forever. So I want to get the saddle butter out, again, with a toothbrush, a little brush like this, to just try to get most of it out. And there's one more step, which is you get a rag, and after it dries for a little bit, without drying out completely, You buff it out. Like that. And it will darken a little bit the more I do it, which is fine with me. You can see that. The more I do this, and I really should do it very often, you'll have a nice saddle that should last you forever if you take good care of it. And I do the same thing again with my bridle. I also like to, I'm sorry, I'm stepping out of frame. I also like to wash my halters and lead ropes because they can have bacteria on them. They can get too stiff. They can become uncomfortable. I'll show you my cinch over here. I love my cinch. Oh, my saddle's filthy. I really had no idea. Let's see. So this is my cinch. I keep that. I like to wash that too. This is mohair, and I really like it. It gives just enough, right? So when the horse is breathing and moving. It's also tightly woven enough so that it won't pinch. I just hand wash this in some mild soap, soft soap, like Dr. Bronner's or something. Let it dry real well. These can get so stiff and so uncomfortable they can almost cut the horse if it gets full of salt. I also wash these regularly. These are vintage ones. I found some vintage ones that had never been used before. These go behind the ring on the cinch to protect the horse's side. And this was real sheepskin. It got worn down. But you can see the salt from the sweat on this. So if I don't keep these cleaned up, the stitching will eventually break. The leather that's holding it in will break. So I just love these. I was so thrilled when I found these. This was Doc cinch. I rode Doc Western for a while. So I want to keep everything nice and clean to make it last, because if you buy quality stuff, it should last you pretty much forever. Also for the comfort of the horse. And also because in the back of my mind, that instructor, Margaret Chamberlain, is inspecting my tack. She's run as we speak. Stirrups. These have some metal on them, which I don't love because it's going to get banged up, but I'll be sure to keep that clean as well. Anything that touches the horse, I want to keep an eye on so he doesn't get uncomfortable, because an uncomfortable horse makes for an uncomfortable ride, which makes for an unhappy equestrian. That's all I've got for you. So I know that James is in the office if there's any questions or comments. I have an awesome camera operator today, and your name is Derek. Graham. I was so close. Thank you, Graham. Where did I get Derek? Anyway, that's all I've got for you today. Thank you for joining me. I think it might be fun if I ran over to the consignment store and got an English bridle and just for giggles took it apart for Mr. Wassam. That's all I've got for you. Again, it's an important thing to do. Some people love it. Some people hate it. I'm on the fence about it, but it's really an important thing. Thanks everyone for tuning in today, and thank you so much for your loyalty and turning in every week for all of our broadcasts. It's been a lot of fun. This is our last broadcast of the season. I'll probably mic up. I should probably work this out with James and Suzanne, maybe, an hour a week or so between now and when I leave on my trip, so I can go through my preparations with you and maybe go through a little bit of the itinerary, which is shaping up pretty well. And that way we can at least check in with each other periodically. We will not be hauling Augie on Thursday. Suzanne is not available. And with the weather being what it is, we thought we would just call our broadcasting with the Augster over for the season. I think it's funny that where's Augie because he blends in with the snow so well. I wonder if should I paint his tail orange or something? That might be funny. I can get that hair dye. How do you think he'd do? I don't think he would care. He's so chill. Crow would have a heart attack, but Augie would be fine. Thanks again for joining me. I'm going to sign off. Inu, Graham, this is Inu. She protects us always. Thanks again, guys. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.